everybody. Welcome back to the first hour of The Young Turks with myself, Elliot Hill, and Michael Shore. Now, we have big breaking news as of like 3.5 hours ago, and that has to do with the Democratic primary, which has had, I think, too many debates up until this point. It's like you just can't turn on the TV without hearing them yapping in prime time. I joke, but of course, there is going to be a surprise Monday town hall hosted by CNN, and we are actually going to be covering it. We'll have live coverage starting at 8:45 p.m. Eastern, 5:45 p.m. Pacific. That's Monday, January 25th, and you can watch at tytnetwork.com/live. Now, of course, we also do stream it on our YouTube channel, but because we don't necessarily know which one it's going to be on, if you go to tytnetwork.com/live, you will always get the right feed for the live stream. So you can save yourself a lot of trouble and heartache by doing that. We have some tweets at #TYTLive that we want to read for you. Tom Wazaki said, "It's Intellectual Wednesday with Jay Aderola, Michael Shore, and Elliot M. Hill. Get your dictionaries out, people." To test to see if the words I'm using are actually words. I assume that's what he means. Right. Let's see. Garden Gnome Esquire says, "It's a shame AJA failed, but hopefully that means he will be doing TYT more often, especially coming into the election. #2012. So he remembers the show.
Wow, 2012. Look at that. Rocket 2012.
Had like the coolest background animation out of any show on TYT Network.
That's right.
Let's see. Michael Gibbs says, "You're not going to eliminate terrorist groups with war, especially the jihadist types who are only further radicalized by war. That is a lesson that will probably take America 40 to 75 years to learn, I think." And Sean Ferris says, "Remember when we invaded the wrong country for 9/11? And he used the Pepperidge Farm, remembers?" So nice. He's the only one people tied together.
That's right, yeah. He brought it all around. I like that, the full circle.
Exactly.
That's cool.
That is cool. Okay, let's jump back into the news. Slightly lighter, it only involves the threat of violence, not the use of it on thousands of people. A man threatening to kill people at the Council on American-Islamic Relations is not unique in America these years, but one man's excuse for why he wanted to do it just might be. His name is John David Weisinger, and he pled guilty last year to making email and telephone threats to CAIR's San Diego and Washington, D.C. offices. He pled guilty to hate crime allegations, making a criminal threat, and possession of an illegal assault rifle. He also admitted to sending CAIR's Washington, D.C. office an email saying that he was going to come there with enough firepower to kill all of you. And he was found he was stalking sort of the vicinity of one of these offices. So what would cause a man to be that angry? Here is the excuse that his lawyer gave. Let's watch.
His attorney says he was drunk and depressed and overwhelmed with the Charlie Hebdo newspaper terrorist shooting.
It was after a week of watching Fox News over and over. The outrage.
The outrage. The outrage. If I had to watch it for a week straight, I would be outraged, but I probably wouldn't make terroristic threats. Look, we don't know at this point what percentage of people who watch a week straight of Fox will go on to make terror threats against Islamic organizations.
Well, he's patient zero. I mean, clearly.
It might be spreading.
But it shows the power, obviously, of the media, and I'm not just saying because this is sort of this isn't happening all the time, but, you know, you drive home a theme, and you want to do it in a positive way, you can do that too. I mean, listen, I think if you've probably watched The Young Turks over the past, and I haven't very much because I've been working a lot over the past 4 months.
Yeah, I'm missing that.
I'm betting. Well, I know that, but I'm betting that that you're going to have a lot of people that are going to go out and vote for Bernie Sanders in the primaries and caucuses, right? And that is a positive effect if that's the effect they want to have. So Fox should own this because it's true. If you do this, somebody's going to crazily latch on to the hateful things that come out of there in very subtle and often very blatant ways and do something absolutely nuts. Yeah. And you know, I don't. It's not surprising. I think it's sad. It's a little funny, but it's not surprising.
No. So let me ask you a question because I mean, Donald Trump has not. But I have to mention Donald Trump.
That's okay. We're allowed to.
I mean, he's the master of this, and he is. So, to what extent, and in terms of harnessing the media, and that's the irony I found with that announcement that Palin, she was saying the mainstream media hate us, and yet they're the two key architects who have found out the elixir or the alchemy of harnessing the mainstream media to their great benefit. So, my question to you, I guess, is to what extent do you think the media ultimately will elect does elect.
Well, I mean, the media does elect. They do. I mean, and media does elect too. I mean, not just the people that report on it. If John Kasich has spent an inordinate amount of money on ads in New Hampshire, and his numbers until today,
he's been in second place.
Well, today he slipped a little bit, but he's been in second place in 3 straight polls. So his ads have been all over. That's media too, and that's
true,
money
right?
and media. Right. The media that cover the election certainly do that. I mean, they and Donald Trump, but Donald Trump also gives acceptable and familiar voice to something that a lot of the people that support him sort of harbor, feelings that they harbor. I went and covered a speech he gave actually here in L.A., and it was on a battleship, and it was before one of the debates, and across the way were a bunch of people that were protesting Trump, racist this, racist that. On the boat were the invited guests and the people who bought their tickets and whatnot, and the press. And they were, let's say, 70 yards away from where the people were sort of penned in who were protesting. And the vitriol and the ugliness that was coming from the boat toward those people was, I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it. I'd never seen it so publicly displayed. I mean, really vicious things about immigrants. It wasn't about black people. It was about immigrants and immigration. And here was this person who was the standard bearer for their ideas, talking about them, and they have somebody that will do that for them. So I don't think that and people are going to follow, but I don't think that he is a creation of having sat home and watched Fox News. But he's a facilitator for those ideas.
He might have learned a few lessons from watching it about what might work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure at some point he said that Bill O'Reilly's a loser. But I don't know that for a fact. But it's an interesting thing that happened. So and I don't know to what effect the media has to do, other than they give him a lot of time, but they've paid him to give him time as well.
Right, it's the legitimization that I have the issue with.
Exactly.
Of those, because it then gives legitimization to those toxic, unpleasant, irrational views. And
but often they build you up. Often they build you up and tear you down, though, and that's. Probably
we should get to that
cycle
soon.
It'll happen, but then they'll build them up again, because once you build someone up, then you tear them down, then you create the sympathy for that person who's been torn out. Richard Nixon, to name one. I mean, foreign policy expert he became late in his life. Well,
really?
It's
and what it is about as much as ratings, and I think that is you do the news cycle a disservice when it becomes about ratings, because then you, then the media entities, they have a very deliberate agenda.
Yeah. Right. Well, I work at a network that couldn't care less about ratings, honestly, and blatantly say we don't care about ratings, and we're going out of business. So that's part of it.
Yeah, but it's a sad state of affairs. But it's not the only one. I remember did you remember the binge-watching guy who killed his friend because he was watching too much Walking Dead?
No, I
and he
did not
killed
know
his
that.
friend. He's in New Mexico.
He
got drunk. He binge watched the show and then killed his friend because he thought his friend was coming in to bite him.
Yeah.
So he killed him with a microwave.
Yeah. Look, that's a tragedy. But
how did he kill him?
He killed him with a microwave.
With a microwave. It's like what they do on the show.
Right.
Okay. If there ever was the first zombie and someone actually stopped an outbreak by killing it, they would be charged with murder, even though they had saved humanity. Look, so this guy thankfully didn't commit any acts of violence. Hopefully will not commit any acts of violence. He's got depression and anxiety. He's got tons of problems, obviously. If you're watching Fox News for a full week, you probably do. And so many people will label him as just a mentally disturbed lone wolf, or would have been if he had committed the acts of violence, even though, again, it seems to be driven by ideology, religious opposition. And the thing is, many people would say, well, look, you're trying to put the onus on Fox to not cause even one of their millions of viewers to go crazy. And obviously that's an impossible standard for any organization. And theoretically, one of our viewers could go crazy someday. But I think that the difference is that to the extent that I can as an individual, look, we say things, but we don't try to purposefully propagate false narratives, hype up threats that don't actually exist. I mean, people who watch Fox and believe that ISIS is the biggest threat that the world has ever known are crazy people, but they're crazy people because they've been lied to by an organization they trust almost every hour on the hour for a couple of years now. And that's the problem. It's not just that you say things from your point of view and crazy people latch onto it. It's that you purposefully manipulate the emotions and fears of an obviously anxious and politically unstable country. We have enough people in our country. There are crazy people. Don't drive them even crazier if you can help it.
Right.
It's like stepping into a beer hall in 1930s Germany.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I mean, the parallels are only too abundant. I mean, it was just in a small way, but it really, I was left completely flummoxed when Marco Rubio earlier in the week said, I bought a gun at Christmas because I need to be the last line of defense.
Against ISIS. So ISIS is going to break into the Rubio home, and there will be Marco with a gun, and then the problem will be solved.
As a response, if you're running for government, you're running for any elected position, aren't you supposed to calm my fears? Aren't you supposed to say, don't worry, you'll let me and I'll take care of it? No, he's saying, no, you need to be your own vigilante. That's how I'm taking care of it. What kind of, I mean...
But what about standing
back
and saying, this guy's a moron? I mean, there's that too. Like, why can't you look at this candidate and say, how could somebody so dumb, with such a juvenile grasp of what protection is and gun laws are and Second Amendment is, why would you want them to leave? Well, apparently the people don't, and the Republicans don't either. I mean, he's wallowing. But
I get wanting to protect your family, but I worry if ISIS gunmen get in there. Like, he's got the gun, but what if he has to reload? What if he has to get a drink of water? Like, then his guard is down.
Right, that's true. And what if there are a few ISISes?
What if there are multiple ISIS? Yeah. Okay,
By the way, barbarity, a word. I mean, I think it's a word.
Vindication.
I keep thinking about it. I think it's a word. I'm going with it.
Lately, I've actually been noticing there are a number of instances where my grasp of grammar not that amazing.
Well,
probably that sentence, actually, I'm starting to feel.
But also, I think the Internet allows a good deal of leeway, more so than dictionaries did in the old days.
I hope so.
I think so. I think the barbarity, you could find barbarity. Barbarity, it's good. But I think it's a word.
Well, it's got the Shore stamp of approval.
When words like bootylicious get admitted into the dictionary,
that's true.
Realize that maybe it's going
exactly
that way.
Right,
yeah. Which I did not yet work into a story about Iraqi civilian casualties. I'm going to work harder in the future. Okay, let's turn to the election. With less than 2 weeks to go until the first primaries and caucuses begin, Claire McCaskill, Democratic senator, is warning voters that if Bernie Sanders ends up winning and becomes the Democratic nominee, then he could tank the whole damn thing for the Democrats. Let's watch.
My colleague said the Republican attack machine has chainsaws for hands. And I think the point I was trying to make is Bernie has not felt those chainsaws, and they would come out with a vengeance if he was our nominee.
Do you think a socialist, a self-declared socialist, could win the presidency of the United States?
I can only speak for my state. I think it would be absolutely impossible. You've got to win states like Missouri if you're going to win the presidency, states like Indiana, states like Ohio, states like Pennsylvania. It is very hard, I think, for most Americans to see how socialism would cure the problems that we are facing right now.
And there's no way that you could ever make that case. So that's what she says on MSNBC.
The other problem is that you don't have to win Missouri or Indiana to win the presidency as a Democrat. She may be right that, yes, socialist in Missouri or Missouri might not be a great thing to put on the back of your jersey, but...
She's overhyping the necessity.
The necessity of winning Missouri or
those
Indiana.
Particular places, yeah. I mean, look, she also, this is obviously not, she wasn't just asked a question and chose to respond, because she also told the New York Times the Republicans won't touch him because they can't wait to run an ad with a hammer and sickle. Which, look, that's a very real threat, because were it to be Hillary Clinton, the Republicans have never attacked her before. They would not be able to find a way. But, to be fair, it might be harder. Look, I personally feel like were he to be the candidate, and were he to find a good way to express why his political ideology would work for the majority of people, and I was recently talking with a friend and said, as much as I hate when politicians do I was speaking with Debbie in Kansas City, and she said he could do a little bit of that. He never, ever does that. I think that could actually help to get down ballot Democrats to be voted in office as well. But a lot of people don't think that that's the case, and a lot of people agree with Claire McCaskill that it could end up being a disaster.
Well, there are a couple of things that are working here. First of all, Claire McCaskill had a very hard time getting back into the good graces of Hillary Clinton. She was an early supporter of Barack Obama's, and there was always a little bit of friction there. Another issue that I think that there has to be looked at with Claire McCaskill and what she's saying here about hurting Democrats is nobody knows, right? So it's the same thing with Ted Cruz in Canada. Most legal scholars think that he's fine, right? That natural born is ill-defined in the Constitution. He was born to a natural-born American mother, in Canada, moved here. He should be eligible according to how it's been. But you go out on the trail, you don't know if having that lingering question over his shoulder is going to hurt the Cruz candidacy. In the same way, socialist. Look, hammer and sickle. Most young voters, well, people don't know what the hammer and sickle is. It's an old thing. It's not something that's going to bother. There are not a lot of Cold War voters who are new to this game who are going to be, turned off of Bernie Sanders.
If they know from anything, it's like retro expensive T-shirts.
Right.
That'll just have one for no reason.
So someone like McCaskill wants to go in low risk, right? So is there a risk to Bernie Sanders? Probably a little bit of a risk. Socialism, a bit of a risk going out there. Could it hurt down ballot Democrats? Definitely. But down ballot Democrats are in trouble in a lot of states anyway, and it also could bring some other people out, Sanders candidacy. You just don't know. But for her to say it in such an absolute way, I also don't. She's allowed to say it. She's allowed to say in Missouri.
Definitely.
Probably not a good thing, and I think that's a danger in nominating Bernie Sanders. It may work out just fine and not be dangerous, but it's something that you have to think about.
Yeah. I mean, we saw recently, I don't know if was it yesterday or was it the day before, it was the New Hampshire poll for Bernie Sanders that puts him up something like 27 points. The CNN poll, that being said, to me, until I see other polls mirroring something like that, it's probably somewhat of an outlier, but even if it's off by 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 points, he's up big, probably. And amongst particular demographic groups, especially millennials, he's just absolutely crushing. And I'm not going to remember, I don't watch late night television, but one of the hosts made the point yesterday that he has somehow, while millennials and young people don't generally care much for extremely elderly people, you can cross the Betty White threshold, and all of a sudden it's cool to like an extremely old person. And because in some ways the policies that he pushes for are the sorts of policies that it's likely that you will be a fan of your freshman or sophomore year of college, that it strikes a tone. And when you can bring in young people, and the economic message should resonate amongst poor and middle-class workers who have been largely left behind, especially by Republicans who are just so aggressively against unions and against anything like raising the minimum wage or various things like that, it's not impossible that he could take that message and bring in new people. And it's not like Hillary Clinton isn't, although she's very popular amongst Democrats, she's a divisive figure, and a lot of people have long since made up their mind about her.
Most people have, John. Most people know what they feel
about. Something like 92%
but that's
have
why
an opinion.
She is a lower risk candidate.
Lower risk, but also lower potential benefit.
Well,
she's not going to all of a sudden bring a wave.
That's true, but if she is able to get younger voters, that's a wave, because she has enough Democrats.
She needs to get him back from Bernie first.
No, she needs to get him back from Obama. She needs to. She doesn't have to worry about Bernie as much as Obama if she gets the nomination. Getting them back from Bernie. These are people that voted for Obama, a lot of them in their early 20s, and a lot of them who are new to the process who vote for Bernie. What people always fail to realize in the primaries is that, are these people going to vote for Hillary? These people dislike Cruz and Trump and those people much more than they dislike Hillary Clinton. And so that is a motivating factor that's going to bring them out in the fall. Probably, maybe not in the perfect numbers that will get them caucusing and voting in the primaries. But listen, I think that nobody can know. Sanders could help every single down ballot Democrat in America. He could really create energy behind them. We just don't know. But it's not unfair for McCaskill to say that.
Because, I'm not saying it's unfair.
No, I know you're not. But I'm sure there are people that are saying it is a good starter for debate. But the big thing is that she is endorsing Hillary Clinton. That's a much bigger piece of news, and it's happened already, because she and Clinton wouldn't even talk to each other or look at each other for a while. So,
we will have to see. And as we get closer to some, the thing is, look, we can go through Iowa and we can go through New Hampshire, and we're still not going to know even then. We'll know some things that we don't know today, but we won't know fundamentally then.
What did you make of his seeming attack on Planned Parenthood and HRC as part of the establishment? Because that, again, it seems to be that kind of tapping into that angry sentiment.
Right, but I don't know that I would call it an attack, though. I think that it would be...
He said you were part of the establishment.
Right, well, but that's assuming that anything that's part of the establishment is an attack. Yes, Planned Parenthood is part of it. It is a political functionary to him, and people of his ilk. But he would protect it at all costs. So I don't think that... he's attacking the group. But I'm saying this is what happens when you have establishment anything, is that people are going to, have to go after the establishment because they operate in ways that make it difficult to defend them very often. Yeah, right. So defending Planned Parenthood is a challenge to some people, even people who sympathize with the work they do, because of the way they're run.
Yeah. Although Hillary, I saw, is already fundraising off of those comments.
Yeah, no, and
it's certainly being pitched
that's
as
what,
an
that's
attack.
what people
That's what they do. That's certainly what they do.
And she'd be fundraising off of something else if,
that's true.
So I don't think
they seem to really think this money is important in these elections.
Yeah,
Jesus.
What are they thinking? It's about votes, John. It's about votes.
And to what you said about the getting the Obama voters, I mean, we saw her continually in the last debate invoking, "I'm the defender and the continuer of the Obama legacy," and she certainly seems to be thinking what you're thinking.
Especially as it applies to healthcare, because I think Bill Clinton said something pretty great today about that, which is that why if Sanders wins and Sanders' health care is out there, maybe it's a good health care plan, but it will create a stalemate, deadlock, a gridlock all the way through while it's debatable. We already have something here. Let's make what's here better and not have to deal with a deadlock Congress over another issue. And I think that's a great piece of politics there, which I think he knows a bit about.
Yeah, I don't want to go off on too much of a tangent. It just seems to me that if the case that you're making, not you, if a person's case that they're making is that you're likely to still have a Republican Congress and you're likely to still have a Republican Senate, and so bringing up single payer isn't going to lead to anything. Well, they're not. They don't seem particularly amenable to any strengthening of Obamacare either.
It's not
so you're basically admitting there nothing's going to happen.
Even if you say you have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, let's just go the other way, and we presume that's not going to happen. But let's go. It's still the idea that anything new creates some kind of gridlock in Congress. We have a health care plan. He's saying, let's make it better. Let's not go down that road. In 1993, I proposed health care, and we got it in 2013 or something. So let's.
Well, if it's going to take that long, we should start now.
Yeah, that's a good point. We should really start it now.
Let's not dawdle.
Yeah.
What's up? Welcome back to TYT Live. TYT, Young Turks, Anna, Kim Horcher.
Hi.
Who hasn't made an appearance on the main show for quite some time.
A long time.
It's been a long time, so I'm super excited to have you. Of course, she's the host of Nerd Alert on TYT Network, so this will be a fun conversation. And Margaret Howell from the Lip TV.
Hi, guys.
Thanks for coming back, Margaret.
Thanks for having me. I love being with these ladies today. It's just,
It'll be fun. It'll be a fun show. This is now the second day in a row where we've had an all-women's second hour.
Power hour.
It should be good. Yes, power hour for sure. All right, so of course use the hashtag TYT Live to tweet to us during the show. We do read your tweets during the breaks and respond to them. And also, I know that John probably already did a members only or members shout out. No? Oh, well then I will do a members shout out. We have two members we want to thank today. Member number 983, Rakesh Patel, and also member number 900, Isabella Costa. In early February, John and I are going to do a call with our executive producers. And executive producers are members who pay a little more money per month, and we do a call with them to kind of get their input on the show. And you guys mean more to us than anything. I mean, you allow us to remain independent. You allow us to not rely on corporate sponsors so we can go ahead and have all the editorial freedom in the world. So I just want to give you guys a huge shout out and thank you. And if you're not a member, you should be one if you care about media, or news, journalism, and you also get our awesome post-game shows. So now that I got that promo out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the big news stories of the day. Sarah Palin's son, Track Palin, has been arrested after a domestic altercation with his girlfriend. Now, he did post bond, but the charges that he faces are serious. According to police reports, the situation got very serious after Track Palin allegedly punched his girlfriend, who is remaining anonymous, in the face, and then proceeded to take a gun that he had, pointed to his own head, and threatened to commit suicide. Now, thankfully, officials showed up to the scene. They did recover the gun. It was unloaded. And they also did see some injuries that his girlfriend suffered as a result of the altercation. Let me give you some more details. Wasilla police were dispatched to a home owned by Sarah and Todd Palin after receiving a 911 call from a woman who said that she had been punched in the face by a male who was also in possession of a gun. Kapler, who's the police official who wrote the police report, writes that upon arriving at the home, he found Palin outside talking on his phone with a visible injury to his right eye. He also observed that Palin's eyes were bloodshot and that his breath smelled like alcohol, and writes that Palin was uncooperative, belligerent, and evasive. Because of Palin's escalating hostility and the unknown whereabouts of the victim, Kapler placed Palin under arrest. Now, they later did find Palin's girlfriend. She was hiding under a bed. It seems like she was so frightened that she needed to hide under a bed. But she seems like she's okay at this point. Palin approached the woman, and this is according to the police report and the account of the girlfriend. Palin approached the girlfriend and struck her on the left side of the head near the eye with a closed fist. The girlfriend got on the ground in a fetal position because she didn't know what else he would do. Sergeant Rader observed that the girlfriend did have bruising and swelling around her left eye. She complained of pain to that area as well as her right knee. He observed a small red area near her knee. The involved firearm, an unloaded AR-15 rifle, was located on the kitchen counter. Now, we'll get to Sarah Palin's response to all of this, but I want to give you ladies an opportunity to jump in about these allegations.
AR-15, that's just all
well,
I
you know,
have to say.
Second Amendment rights.
I was reading this affidavit. We have copies. And there were a few things that stuck out to me as not really leaning toward PTSD, but leaning more toward domestic abuse. There's a part in here in which he says, the officer says that Track called the police later and said, oh, that woman was drunk, which reads strongly of something called gaslighting, which is something that is very prevalent in domestic abuse cases. It's kind of a manipulative way of spinning or omitting information in which to favor the abuser. And that just, I mean, I don't necessarily know that's the case on an anecdotal level, but that really reads strange.
Yeah, it's interesting that he called the police right after his girlfriend called the police and let them know, hey, my girlfriend's drunk. Now, whether or not she was actually drunk is unclear. I haven't read anything about that. The police haven't written anything about that so far as I can see. But they did get into some sort of fight while they were both out together, a verbal altercation, if you will. And then they were fighting all the way home. And then finally, once they get home, they continued arguing in the car. And that's when things started to really escalate. Margaret, what do you think about all this?
You know, the only other times in media that we've reported on AR-15s, San Bernardino, Sandy Hook, and now the Palin. So, you know, just having that all clumped together, AR-15 in this young man's hand, a few things strike me. So in the police report, he used the word pussy. Do you think I'm a pussy? That's the exact same word that his mother used on the campaign trail when she was referencing President Obama. That's a really just bizarre word for me. You know, they're both using it, that mentality. It's just really strange. You know, he lives at home, 26 years old, clearly has emotional issues, and the fact that his mother was able to turn this into a campaign stump speech, if you will, of sorts, highlighting his PTSD. He's an Iraq vet, which is pretty serious. You know, if that were the case, why in the hell does he have an AR-15? And why is he around alcohol?
That's a great point. So obviously, Sarah Palin is in the news. She had been in the news because she endorsed Donald Trump. And after her endorsement and after her endorsement speech, there was that elephant in the room. People wanted to know what was going on with her own family and, you know, family issues. And she did address it in what I would call the most ridiculous way imaginable, but could you expect anything less from Sarah Palin? Let's take a look at what she had to say.
I can talk personally about this. I guess it's kind of the elephant in the room because my own family going through what we're going through today with my son, a combat vet, having served in a Stryker brigade, fighting for you all, America, in the war zone. But my son, like so many others, they come back a bit different. They come back hardened. They come back wondering if there is that respect. And that starts from the top. It's a shame that our military personnel even have to wonder if they have to question if they're respected anymore. So when my own son is going through what he goes through coming back, I can certainly relate with other families who kind of feel these ramifications of some PTSD, and it makes me realize more than ever, it is now or never, for the sake of America's finest, that we have that commander-in-chief who will respect them and honor them.
So she's implying that our current president doesn't respect the troops, and that continues to exacerbate the issue of PTSD. So that was her incredible way of blaming Obama for what her son did in this domestic altercation. Look, her son very well might have PTSD, but it's very interesting to me that conservatives, Republicans, who are constantly talking about supporting our troop, and that's what the patriotic thing to do is, never really focus on issues of mental health, especially regarding our troops. The only time they do is when it's convenient for them. And it enrages me. Here's the thing, Sarah Palin. If you are in favor of making sure that the mental well-being of our troops are intact, one thing that you could do is not support presidential candidates that want to beef up our foreign policy in the Middle East, right? Send more troops in the Middle East, fearmonger about ISIS, and ensure that we not only continue the current foreign policy that we have now, but expand on it. So do not cry to me about PTSD and how seriously you take it. You're only using this because it's convenient for you in this very moment.
It was very funny wording, which was support our troops, but
Right.
that could be very ambiguous. And we've seen support our troops to mean a lot of times, let's go to parades and rallies and rah-rah, but let's forget about them when they're done or when they're hurt or when they have emotional issues.
Exactly.
And it's odd that she would use that particular wording.
Right. Look, he might have PTSD. I have no idea. Does that give him a pass if he decides he wants to beat up his girlfriend? No, it doesn't. But if he does have any type of mental health issue, he should be evaluated. There shouldn't be any weapons in the house that he's living in, especially if he's coping with these issues. And we should do something to stop the fact that we continuously send our troops to wars that we shouldn't be involved in. If you care about the mental well-being of these troops, if you really want to be an American patriot, a good thing to do is be a little more picky as to which countries you invade and how you invade them, right? But again, all of these points about mental health care are exploited by Republicans when it's convenient for them. There's a mass shooting in this country and the perpetrator is a white male. Oh, well, we need to focus on the mental health care. But then they don't do anything about mental health care. When it comes to PTSD for Sarah Palin, oh, well, this is a convenient time to bring up PTSD. But what are you doing to ensure that we don't send troops to wars that we shouldn't be involved in? Nothing. If anything, you're an advocate for those wars, okay? You fearmonger and try to convince Americans that we need to be in these Middle Eastern countries. We do not need to be there. So if you genuinely care about the mental health care of Americans and specifically of troops, then what you're doing is only exacerbating the problem that we're dealing with right now.
I also take issue with he came back like this, as if the Palin family is this moral compass upstanding group. But when we look at things like this crazy family brawl, and there are allegations, mind you, allegations, not necessarily police reports on this, of Track abusing drugs and being the ringleader of these vandals in Wasilla. And it's just like, who are you to tell people these morally upstanding, well, I mean, what that is up to your judgment. But then just not stick by it at all. We've seen them. They've been in the public eye for some time. I don't think it's fair for you to argue that the war made him this way and this is Obama's fault.
How exacerbated is this going to be when her instinct is to attack, number one, but number two, she used the word respect 3 or 4 times there, that he didn't feel respected. Well, let me think about this. He's loaded with a weapon that's probably loaded, hitting his girlfriend in the face. I mean, you would think that word, conjuring that word, really rubbed me the wrong way when she just said that. Okay, so how is he commanding respect? With a weapon, hitting a woman in the face? I mean, she really doesn't seem to be addressing his issues at all. She seems to be exacerbating.
She's making excuses for him, and she's blaming Obama, which I find very interesting when she's from the party that touts personal responsibility. You want to talk about personal responsibility? Take a good hard look at your own family and their own actions and own behavior, and why don't you do something to fix that before you get on a podium and judge the actions of other people, right? Because your family has all sorts of issues. You have a daughter who's now the mother of 2 children that she had from 2 different fathers out of wedlock. I'm not trying to shame her for that, but she made over $200,000 giving abstinence speeches, right? I mean, what is wrong with this country where we reward this kind of bad behavior.
Remember Track himself, I mean, he got married in 2011 to this woman who gave birth 3 months later, and then they had a weird divorce. I mean, that goes right along with that hypocritical behavior.
Yes,
thank you.
Absolutely. Anyway, it's just frustrating to see a situation like that, and it gives the Palins an opportunity for humility, right? But they prove time and time again that they have no humility. They like to place the blame on everyone else when the real blame should be placed on themselves and their own family members. You can't go around judging people in the way they live their lives when you have children who are just
completely working in the opposite of the face of what you're telling America to do.
It's incredible. All right, let's move on to other news today. R. Kelly granted an interview to GQ, and he promised that he would elaborate or talk about some of the criminal cases that he was involved in the past. Now, as you guys know, back in 2008, he was standing trial for a case involving a video that leaked, and the video allegedly featured R. Kelly urinating on an underage girl, okay? And this was during a sexual act. So he did not want to answer questions about this when he was on HuffPost Live. And I was very skeptical that he would answer questions about this with GQ. And I didn't need to be, proven wrong because he proved me right. He didn't answer any questions. Now, he spoke to Chris Heath at GQ, and let me give you some of the answers that he did provide. So he was asked, let me ask you a simple question. Was that you in the video? That was the question, right? And he responded and said that because of my lawyers, to this day, I cannot have those kinds of conversations, being advised by my lawyers in this. Okay, then why are you doing the interview? If you promised to do an interview where you would actually talk about these cases, then why don't you give the answers? And if you're not willing to give the answers, then don't waste anyone's time. But it continues. He also talks about how he was a victim of, sexual molestation from a family member of his own. And, he elaborates on that a little bit, and he says that it turns into a cycle. It turns into a learned behavior, and it becomes a curse within a family. But he believes that he overcame that curse, and he didn't continue it, right? I'll give you his answers on that in a second. But he also talks about his very brief marriage to Aaliyah, which was later annulled because she was not old enough to, to consent to the marriage. She was only 15 years old. So he was asked about that and said that he was in love with her, but not the kind of love that we think of. Well, there's a lot of ways to be in love with a person. I was in love with my grandfather, But yeah, I would say I was in love with Aaliyah, just like I was in love with anybody else, but in a different friend type of way. Yeah, because, we're all into marrying our grandfathers or our friends. That kind of thing. I don't know what's going on with this dude. He's very questionable.
It was a weird interview.
It really was.
He does say, I'm like Bill Cosby. But I mean the way we used to think of Bill Cosby. But then later he seems to sympathize with him, and he goes back and forth, and it's very confusing.
The thing is, when you are likely guilty of doing illegal things, and your wealth and celebrity allowed you to dodge criminal charges or at least criminal convictions, it's really hard for you to do an interview where you defend yourself and not come off as someone who's like doing double talk. And you see what I'm saying?
It was just all over the place.
Yeah.
And his lawyers were there. It was not a no-holds-barred interview like they were saying.
Exactly.
Guys, the biggest part of this for me, the generational curse aspect, that is something directly out of an evangelical playbook where you're taught that you can overcome a generational curse. It's a mainstay of Christianity, modern Christianity. I'm wondering who's advising him on breaking generational curses.
I actually did a little research on that about a cycle from victim to victimizer.
Yeah, and that is a cycle. And I think that's what
there's actually,
to.
From a psychiatric point of view, there's very little empirical evidence on that. And from the studies I found from the British Journal of Psychiatry, it was like the conclusion was perhaps, not really definitive. I don't know if you can actually.
So this is something that I've looked into as well, because I always thought it was kind of interesting when those, like the perpetrators of sexual assault or rape, tend to also be victims of rape or sexual assault themselves. And I think that's what he was trying to touch on. I talked to a sociologist and a social worker about this, and I asked, I was like, is this common? Like when you are interviewing a client or talking to someone who's been a victim of sexual abuse, what are the dynamics of that? How does it work out? How does that manifest in the future? And a lot of times, not for all, but for a lot of people who have been molested or sexually assaulted in some way, it's not surprising when they do end up being those who assault and rape in the future. I'm not saying all of them do, but it happens. So I think that's what he was trying to talk about. So let me give you that exact quote, and then you guys can judge for yourselves. The most fascinating piece of the interview concerns R. Kelly's past history of being sexually abused. He says he was molested by a family member beginning at the age of 8, and his belief that sexual abuse is a learned behavior passed down from generation to generation. He says, well, you know, just like poverty has a generational curse in my family too, but I decided that I'm going to stop that curse. I'm not going to be broke like my mom was broke, my uncles were broke, my sisters didn't have any money, my cousins on down. Generational curse doesn't mean that the curse can't be broken. Just like having no father, that's a generational curse, which is why when my kids were born, he continues, I was Bill Cosby in the house, you know, the good one. You know, let's be clear here, how we saw Bill Cosby when we were coming up. Here's the thing. I don't think that he's very tactful when it comes to giving these interviews. I don't think that he meant, hey, I was the Bill Cosby of the house where I was cheating on my wife by raping other women on the side. I don't think that's what he was trying to say. I think he was trying to say that he had the squeaky clean image that Bill Cosby touted to have when behind the scenes he was a rapist, right? Yeah. So, you read the evidence of these cases, especially the 2008 case, and the writing's on the wall, right? I mean, he was very, very lucky to not get convicted in that case. And it's because he has the resources to take advantage of our two-tier justice system. But, please spare me these interviews where you just want to plug your work and you want to plug whatever album you're coming out with next. And you use this facade of, yeah, I'm going to talk about my personal life and I'm going to answer any question to get the interview. You're not going to answer any questions. It's not an interesting interview. I don't care about your music or your work. It's totally irrelevant to me. You're able to dodge the law based on your wealth and your celebrity, and that's really all this is about.
It's disturbing, too, though, if you think of it. I mean, I've read this. My heart, I'm not a fan of R. Kelly, but I feel for him because when you think of somebody, you know, if they're a little kid, they actually experience sexual abuse. I can only imagine what he's dealing with as an adult. You really don't want him to sidestep it. I'm totally with you. You just want him to come clean. Just say something that's true in this so we can get past your seeing you in this way. I guess that's how I feel. Yeah. I don't want to paint him as this awful guy who's a child molester, when in reality he might be really legitimately dealing with some demons.
I have no doubt that he's probably dealing with some demons, but that doesn't excuse any type of criminal behavior. Right?
I agree.
So I don't know if I feel bad for him, but
I don't.
Right. But I'm tired of manipulating interviews like this. You see what I'm saying? Like telling someone that you're willing to answer questions and then you go there and you don't answer any questions is beyond frustrating. So,
they should retitle this article really quickly to not R. Kelly confessions. We need a better misconfessions, non-confessions.
Non-confessions. I like that. That's definitely more accurate. All right, guys, let's take our first break. And when we come back, I will give you the nitty-gritty on the Zika virus that's now impacting some Americans. What is it? What kind of ramifications does it have? You do not want to miss this story, so stick around.